Mic is on though. You guys can hear me?
Yes, sir.
There we go. There we go. All righty. Well, good Wednesday morning. How are we doing? Does somebody have some energy, some life? Can we get a microphone unmuted for me? We've got big news to discuss today. We have got a U.S. government shutdown. Are we seeing this in the news? Is it surprising anybody?
No,
No. No. Dave, you have any of your own thoughts or?
I think it's typical the way things are going right now, continue to be polarized and everything shows that it doesn't affect a whole lot if you're not a government employee at the moment.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's kind of par for the course of what is going on in the world, our nation, et cetera. And who knows how long this thing is going to go. But I feel like it's not going to be quick for whatever reason.
Yeah,
So it's something that we've obviously we've got to chat about because it can affect our real estate transactions, right? We've got, especially for Govy loans, whether that's FHA, VA, USDA, there could be delays in mortgage processing. Um, Eric, I don't know. I see you're on with us this morning. I'm assuming you've been through this before. This seems to happen every few years where we get a little bit of a government shutdown. Any experience with how much this could possibly affect the mortgage process on the Govy loans?
So for the most part, it's usually pretty smooth, because we've done it enough times now. I can remember some of the first times this happened. So what will be affected is we won't be able to pull like FHA case numbers. We won't be able to get their mortgage insurance endorsed. What happens is most lenders just allow you to proceed, and then once everything reopens, we'll pull the case numbers, we'll get everything endorsed. So there's a little bit of risk involved on the lending side, but it usually everybody just kind of has to deal with it and moves forward.
So can you start a new um, loan, or is it just like everything kind of status quo for the stuff that's in process?
So yeah, we'll be able to start new ones, but that's where the risk comes in for the lenders, because there'll be some things like at FHA and VA that are down, like the automated systems.
Yep.
So we won't be able to process certain things until after the loan's closed, and then God forbid something comes up, then we've got to deal with it.
Okay. So like, some of the things that I'm thinking would be like, IRS transcripts, right? For the tax returns and stuff like that. Like if that's not open, you guys can't get access to that stuff, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, the good thing is, like, we've obviously gone into much more technological. Like I have a login for my IRS. I know a lot of people do. I could go in and download my transcripts in 30 seconds. They're there. So it would be more ordering them through a third party and then waiting for them to come from the IRS wouldn't work because they wouldn't fulfill any of those orders. But the technology is still there. If the data is there, you can still go retrieve it.
Okay.
So it would cause us to have to coach the clients a little bit more on how to actually set up maybe an online account, or actually utilize that online account to go retrieve what we need.
Okay. Um, what about actually closing on one of these loans? Is there anything that would prevent it? Because I thought I heard you say, well, we could close and then go back and do some stuff after. So is that the case? If you've got a VA or an FHA or USDA loan pending right now, scheduled to close today, is it closing?
Yeah, so I will say this, you can go back through history, the times that we've had these shutdowns, most of them have only lasted under 20 days, which we all know kind of, the life of a loan process is usually about 25 to 30 for the most part, 90% of the time between, waiting for title to come in, waiting for appraisal, things like that. So most times when we've had these shutdowns, we're able to clear all that stuff up before a closing anyway. There was one time, I believe it was in 2020 or 2021, where it lasted 35 days. And that's where lenders were taking the risk and closing the loans without those documents and then hoping that when they did pull them afterward, that everything was going to be okay. So that's where the big risk came in. But we were still closing them then.
Right. So in theory, if you've got an FHA deal pending right now, you've already gotten whatever you need to get from the government. So you could still just close it. There is no risk because something that was scheduled to close today, there's nothing that you're getting last minute from the government.
Correct.
Yeah.
We've already done 90% of our due diligences. Usually in the first, I would say 7 to 10 days of a loan process, all that stuff's been done. So if you're, a week into the process, there's usually nothing that we need. We've already done all of that. It all gets done right at, application.
Yep.
So, granted, a new file. If I get a new file today, will there be some items we can't get? Yes. Odds are the shutdown won't last weeks and upon weeks, hopefully. Like I said, most of them have all ended in, the 15, 16-day range. Most shutdowns have only lasted that long. So, we're just getting title and appraisal back then. Then we would just circle back and do the things we would normally do up front, still have them before closing. There was the one time that it was either 2020 or 2021, the shutdown was 35 days. And that's when lenders were closing loans without the pertinent information and just hoping.
Gotcha.
So, but we still closed. Every shutdown we've ever had, it becomes a little chaotic behind the scenes. But we've always closed loans.
And then I don't know what time rates come out for you guys, but did anything happen yesterday with rates because of the potential of a shutdown? Anything today?
So the rates usually follow the bond. The bond's pretty unchanged from yesterday.
Okay.
So nothing really on the horizon there.
All right.
Which I guess is good because,
Yeah.
which is good because usually when there's bad things happening, there's a potential for it to get worse. So that's a good thing that it's just holding steady.
Yep. And I don't know if you want to just kind of talk to rates in general, because I feel like the past week since last week's calls, it's been a good week for rates, right?
Yeah, rates are decent. I mean, we're seeing mid to low sixes. I'm getting a lot of people down into the fives with a small fee. So we're definitely seeing that, which is really advantageous, obviously for maybe not for the first time home buyer because they don't usually have a surplus of money. But if somebody was selling and buying and they have a surplus of money that they're bringing over, I have a conversation with them. I show them, hey, if you just used your money for down payment, here's your loan amount. Here's what your new payment would be. If we used a portion of that money from your sale to buy your rate down permanently, granted, you're not putting as much money towards down payment, but with the lower rate, it actually yields a better payment, even though you're borrowing a little bit more money. So just kind of showing them the two samples, letting them make a decision. So it's definitely making people a little more comfortable being able to buy their rate down and get something that starts with a 5. People are obviously much happier hearing that number.
Any questions from anybody regarding the shutdown? Anything mortgage related? Go ahead, Margareta.
Good morning. About buy downs, what is the maximum points most loans you can buy down on? Is it 2 points, 3 points?
So with our average loan amounts being in the 300s, I've usually found that there's a federal high cost test that we have to perform. And so usually it's around 2.75 to 3% is going to be the maximum that they can pay to buy their rate down, or they'll start to violate that federal high cost test, and then we wouldn't actually be able to do the loan.
So that is a federal regulation?
Correct. There's a maximum cost associated with purchasing points or paying fees in general, whether you want to or whether the lender's asking you to. The federal government has some guidelines in there so that somebody who maybe didn't know what they were doing couldn't be talked into paying more than they should. Versus on the flip side, just because somebody says, hey, I've got the money, I want to buy my rate down further, they just can't because of that law.
And the actual cost, it's just 1 point is 1%. There's no other fees, right?
Correct. So 1 point equals 1% of the loan amount. So that's the biggest thing too. It's not of your, like I know, like in the realty world, percentages are all based on your purchase price. In the lending world, it's all based on just the loan amount. So if somebody was buying a house for $500,000, but they're putting down $200,000, now they're only borrowing $300,000. So the 1% would only be based on the $300,000, not the total purchase price.
Right, whatever they're borrowing, right?
Correct.
Right. Great. Thank you so much.
Martin, I just see you putting something in the chat. Do you want to expand on that?
I guess my question is, because we don't know where rates are going, is the 2-1 worth paying for, or do we see rates just going down in the future? Because I know, like, after the third year, it's set.
So obviously, any of these temporary buy downs are always beneficial for what they are. The biggest thing with when you get into doing the temporary buy downs is how's it going to be paid, because that's the only one where the buyer can't contribute towards that cost.
Just to clarify, so for permanent buy down, we're still looking at 2 to 3 points, right?
Yeah, so for a permanent buy down, it could be anywhere from 0 all the way to maximum of 3% buy down.
Okay, gotcha. Because so I this is what I get confused on the 2-to-1 versus the permanent. Well, can you explain that better? Maybe I would appreciate it.
Yeah, so a permanent buy down is you're paying points to get a lower rate, and the lower rate is going to stay for the entire term of the loan, whatever term you picked. If you took on a 15-year, a 20-year, or a 30-year, you're paying the points up front to get a lower rate, and that lower rate is going to stay there for the entire term. That's a permanent buy down. A 2-1 or a 1-1 temporary buy down is basically you're not really paying points. It's prepaid interest is all it is. So we say, hey, you're going to get a 6% interest rate. Great. So you did a 2-1 buy down. So for the first year, you're going to have a 4%. For the second year, you're going to have a 5%. And then year 3, it's going to go to the normal 6. So basically what we do is we just recalculate the payment. That's all they're doing. It's just based on that rate, but you're really recalculating the payment. So for that first year, we go, all right, you're going to get a 4%. The payment's $300 less a month. Okay, well, there's $300 a month for 12 months. That's $3,600 difference. So we need $3,600. We got to put that here in the kitty. Then we go, all right, year 2, your rate's going to be 5% instead of 6%. That payment's $150 less per month per se. We have 12 months. We've got to put that money aside. Okay, we need another $1,800. So now we need $3,600 for the first year. We need $1,800 for the second year. So we need $5,400. So it's not points. It's literally $5,400 that goes on a line item on the final CD that says we're putting this into your temporary buy down escrow account. And then basically when you send in your mortgage payment month 1, and it's $300 less, they're going to take your payment and then they're going to reach in this little bucket that's called the buy down escrow account. And they're going to take the $300 out of there to make up the difference. So the bank's still getting their 6% of interest every single month, even on a temporary buy down. They're still making the same amount of money. It was just prepaid and put in a little kitty And now it doesn't have to come from the consumer. It's coming out of that little temporary buy down escrow account.
Yeah, see, that's why it doesn't make sense to me. Why would anybody do 2-1 buy down versus permanent? I mean, you want to impact your overall loan.
So it would be if we were more in a buyer's market per se, right, than a seller's market or just an even market. So just think if you were trying to sell your house and you were selling it for 400,000 and nobody was buying it, rather than dropping your price from 400,000 to 390,000, you could say, "Hey, for 5,400 bucks, I could offer somebody a temporary buy down." Rather than me dropping a whole 10,000. So now me as a seller could go, "Hey, if you buy my house, I'll guarantee you get a 2% lower rate for year one and a 1% lower rate for year two, and I'll pay for it." So
But
now it
wouldn't we
wouldn't be
offer
costing
that
the
for
buyer.
permanent buy down because that would impact their overall debt?
So the biggest thing, the biggest difference between a permanent buy down and a temporary buy down is a permanent buy down. If you say, "Hey, I want to pay 1 point," that's 1% of your loan amount. It's not going to drop your rate 1%. It's not 1-for-1. 1% buy down on a permanent might only drop your rate 1/4 of a point.
Oh, okay.
It's not 1% for 1%.
Okay, I was
It's all
missing that.
based. Yeah, it's all based on like an algorithm where they come up with the interest rates. So it's not 1-for-1, whereas the 2-1 buy down is 1% less or 2% less.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Thank you. That's what I was missing.
Yeah.
And Eric, I thought I heard you say the borrower cannot pay for the 2-1 buy down themselves. They can only do the permanent buy down.
Correct. So when you're doing a 2-1 buy down, the only people that are allowed to pay for that cost is the seller, the listing agent, the buyer's agent, or the lender, or a combination of the four. Or a builder, if it's a new build. Builders can also pay it.
Can all of those parties contribute on a permanent buy down?
So if you're going to contribute on a permanent buy down, we would all just do it as credits.
Okay. Any other questions about the buy downs? The government shutdown, that stuff. All right. Typically, we get started with some headlines. The biggest, latest headline is the FTC has sued Zillow and Redfin over that rental deal that we had talked about, basically claiming antitrust violations. So in that deal, Zillow became the sole provider of multifamily rental listings for Redfin. And so with Redfin exiting the rental market and transferring, I guess, all of their contracts and 450 employees to Zillow, FTC is saying, hey, wait a second, this reduces competition in the rental market, limiting choices, and could raise costs for property managers and renters. Zillow's defense on this is that the deal is pro-competition, giving renters broader access to listings. So don't know how this one's going to play out, but interesting to see the FTC going after the big guys here. So I don't know if anybody else has read anything else or experienced anything with regards to the rental market to kind of chime in here. I know I did hear from a couple of agents that are heavy in the rental market in Boston, just saying that the new way that the compensation is working is affecting the rental market. So, Lauren, did you have something?
I was just going to say that Zillow also is currently being sued by, so happens to be the same law firm, class action that just went through all the NAR stuff, for unclarity on delivering buyers to agents rather than the listing agent, and them not knowing that the agent is automatically required to pay X% to Zillow for that connection. So I thought more so funny that it was the same company, money grab, really more than anything, but they're going everywhere now.
Yeah, it's crazy with just like disclose. So yeah, they're in another battle there, basically saying, hey, the consumer didn't know that there are referral fees. It's like, well, you know, there's agent to agent referrals going on too. Are those going to have to get disclosed now to the consumer, right? Because that would be the next one that they would potentially go after, because that's happening on all of those deals. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this lawsuit. Yeah. And I mean, I get there's got to be disclosures. I understand that the consumer really should be made aware of whatever really could affect them. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how all these things play out. Adam, Chris is telling me you should speak on the rental piece, I believe. So.
Nothing to do with the rental piece. Sorry. Just that
Oh.
he had good stuff to talk about.
Okay.
I'm gonna wait one more week. It's still playing out, so I think I'll be able to give more context next week on what she's talking about.
Okay. All right.
Sorry for the
false alarm on good nuggets. Anybody else have any questions on these lawsuits? I mean, these are big ones, So, you guys know how these things. It could be years before these things get settled, and we'll see how it all plays out and what disclosures are going to become required. All right, Lauren. Well, the next thing I had was for you to talk about this change to the Massachusetts inspection. Are you prepared to do that? If I can get some of your stuff up on the screen.
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. Let's see if I can get that shared. Look at that. Something worked for me. So I don't know if you can see my screen, but October 15th, guys, for Massachusetts agents is the when this new inspection law starts. So we are 2 weeks away. 1 to 4 unit residential properties are what is affected, and we really got to understand this one. So Lauren, I'll let you take it from here. I'll change to the next slide.
Okay.
And just for you, those of you guys who can't see this, if you're actually on the Zoom but you're driving or whatever, these are recorded. You can find them on social. They are on YouTube. They're on Facebook. They're on LinkedIn. I think the only one they don't stay posted on is Instagram. So.
Yeah, majority of this information is available to every single agent on the MAR website as well. So applies to those, like Steve was saying, 1 to 4 residential properties only, not commercial, not mixed use, residential only. The biggest thing that's like in question here is on a lot of the documents we refer to as reasonable timelines and reasonable thresholds for some of the new blanks that you guys are going to see. All right, so there's not set deadlines. There's not that 10-day inspection period that we heard might be coming, has to be given. It is reasonable for both parties involved in that transaction. All right, so you'll kind of see what I'm talking about in a few minutes there. So we have a change to the MAR 501, the offer contract, the 503, the purchase and sale, the MAR 523, which is a waiver of inspection rights addendum, and there is a new seller disclosure. That one is not available yet. There is a draft form of it. We're waiting for, the state is waiting for final approval on that one, but the MAR forms are all available in the MAR library for you guys to start using now, looking at now. And then as of October 15th, they will be required to use those forms instead of the ones that we currently have.
And on that seller disclosure, that's going to be a mandatory form that the seller just understands what the buyer's inspection rights are.
Absolutely. Yep. So think very much like our lead disclosure. Okay, but be required on every single property. Seller is going to have to provide that with seller signature and list agent signature. Easiest way, attach them right in the MLS so that it's there, because legally it has to be provided as part of the offer package when received and signed by the seller. Okay, and anything that's currently on market that is not under agreement, we will have to get and add these to those listings on October 15th. So that's a big one also.
So here's the two options.
Yep. So on the new offer form, which is going to be on your next screen to see it, you're going to have two options for what your contingency is going to look like. Okay, so there's going to be a checkbox. They split up the contingencies on the MAR form. It used to be inspection and mortgage were in one contingency section. They are now separate on that form. So section 7 is just the inspection contingency. Most of the paragraph is similar with a few changes to it. So you still have your date on there for what your inspection contingency is. And then below that, you're going to have two checkboxes. One is going to say at buyer's sole discretion, which means if for any reason at all the buyer wants to back out after inspections, we have the right to do so. We are not setting a monetary limit to what that is, etc. Right? So this is going to be your broadest protection for your buyers. But they added a second one in there that says the aggregate repair threshold, which is saying if you put something on there that if repairs are under whatever amount of dollar that you put on there, and you have to have proof to back it up, right? Then you cannot back out for your inspection contingency. So if you put $2,000 on there, if you put $5,000 on there, 10,000, whatever, and you have your inspection and then you have somebody out to give you quotes to repair those, and total repairs are less than the amount that you put on there, then you cannot back out. You cannot terminate for inspections. All right, and so we can see that outlined here in that new section 7. An important thing.
This is the language here, Lauren, that
Yeah.
we're pretty strong about using, right? Just, hey, we're not going to back out unless there's something major, right? Put a big number in there for
Yes.
the cost.
So we used it already as a negotiating tactic, and it's kind of the out, right? That they're saying you can use as long as it's reasonable. Don't put $1 million in there, right? On a $300,000 house. That is unreasonable for a repair amount, and that's a reason where the seller could be like, "Hey, you put an unreasonable amount here, right? You can't just back out for that." But if you put, that 25, 50,000. Chances are you're not going to find that amount worth, right? So it's saying I'm moving forward kind of as quickly as possible. Another suggestion to kind of show that potentially maybe you don't intend to do inspections after they accepted or something to that effect, you can put a 1-day inspection contingency in here, right? So it could be the day after. So those are kind of some of the workarounds. Obviously, it can't be, within a couple hours of the time I'm writing the offer, but shorter periods or a higher threshold for the monetary amount there. Something else I do want to point out on this one is this protection is only for home inspections. Okay, so the standard home inspections by a licensed home inspector. I have a list of what those are. I think maybe the next one. And it does not cover, there's another list. Okay. Yep. So this only covers roofing, exterior, structural, electrical, plumbing, heating and cooling, general interior, and insulation. In the paragraph 7 of the offer that we're writing, you are not protected for any of those other inspection types in there. And those you can still waive. You can waive radon, you can waive water testing, you can waive pest, all of that. You just cannot waive the home inspection. Right. This is the waiver of inspection rights. This is not a required document. This is a highly recommended. Cover yourself if your client is going to decide to not do the inspection after they get the accepted offer. Okay. So this one just says we have an accepted offer on a property. We are waiving the right to inspections, and we understand what that means. very important that this is dated after you have an accepted offer, right? We see a date on this prior, you could get yourself into some trouble.
So
Right,
Lauren, the
again,
thought process here is, I submit my offer with a 1-day inspection period or a short one, 2 or 3 days with a pretty high threshold, 25, 50,000. And then I get my offer accepted and then I go ahead and actually don't do the inspection. The agent has me sign this.
correct. Yeah. And then this does not need to go to seller side at all. This is going to be buy side, buyer agent, buyer protection sort of blanket there. Because I think that's a really important piece of this is buyer is not being forced to do an inspection. Okay. Like they don't have to, they can still choose after accepted offer to not do the inspection. They just cannot make it known prior to an accepted offer in any way that they intend to not do that inspection. And then there are a couple of exclusions to this. So new construction homes, where the construction is entered, where the contract is entered into prior to substantial completion, it includes a warranty on that property. Okay, so huge for new builds, right? And this is if you get a property under contract prior to the example given was license to occupy, right? So pretty far along in the process there. Estate planning. So if you're writing a property into a will, something like that. Any foreclosures and as a divorce proceeding. I think that was the main overview.
Yeah, that's all I had. Does anybody have any questions on this new law? Dave, anything from, oh, sorry, I see a couple of hands up. And then Dave, I'd just like to get your thoughts if you've got anything on the inspection side. Margareta.
So let's say that they put in down like $10,000 for repairs, but let's say that, the furnace is old and the replacement will be more than that. What happens then? And they're like, after inspection, the furnace is, let's say, functioning. And then after inspection, they say, well, it's an older furnace, but it's working. And it's highlighted at the inspection report. What happens after that? Like if the buyer says, well, I want a new furnace.
Well, I think Margareta, you're just using it to back out, right? So if it comes in at 15,000 for a new HVAC system, you've exceeded the 10,000 that you put in there. And so, hey, I didn't realize I was going to need a new furnace. I'm going to be backing out of this deal.
So it would be valid.
Yep.
Wow.
Adam, did you have something?
Yeah, just a couple. I couldn't disagree more with whoever decided this was a good idea of forcing people to do this. But anyway, I thought Lauren said something about this was in home inspection was now combined with mortgage contingency, or did I mishear that? I just wanted clarification on if there's a separate, because typically you've got inspections for the first couple of weeks and mortgages a couple of weeks after that. So I just wanted clarification on that.
They're not, excuse me, they're not together. And in the new contract, they used to be one paragraph. It's now 2 separate paragraphs for contingencies, not combined, more separate.
Okay.
And it was the home inspector lobbyist group in Massachusetts that brought this upon legislation to have a change made. So it was home inspectors that pushed for this. And these changes that came through, and the lobbyists for the home inspectors union won here.
Dave, we'll let you defend yourself.
Oh, I don't, I wasn't one that was necessarily for it. I think that what happened during COVID time period when people were buying anything and everything and prices were going up and either people were waiving inspections or being talked into this or that, not necessarily by the realtor, it could have been by relatives. It really created some nightmares. I mean, I know of a couple scenarios myself that um, one in particular, a realtor was a client was moving, relocating from North Carolina to the area. And they asked the realtor to go through the house with a camera and or their phone. And they did and went through everything, and they bought it sight unseen. Next thing you know, they move in after waiving inspections and found that they've got a failing foundation and they've got a rodent infestation, which really has nothing to do with home inspection per se. But then they went after the realtor. So I think there's some protection in here for the realtor as much as the, I don't know that it protects the home inspector at all. I think it is more a consumer protection for the buyer. However, it's always been buyer beware. So I'm not so sure that it changes much of anything, at least in my opinion. My hope is that everybody is ethical anyways, meaning buyer, seller, realtor, inspector, and if we are, then everything should go along smoothly. So from our end, it won't change anything, and I think we'll be in good shape. We're prepared to support you in doing the inspections one way or the other.
I would tend to agree with you, Dave. I think things got out of control there. I think some buyers probably got taken advantage of, and potentially by the agent who's just trying to push a deal through, or being honest. Unfortunately, if you don't do this, you're probably not going to get the house. So whether it's the agent trying to push it through, or you're just really not going to get the house, this is what you got to do.
Right.
So I love the language that just basically says, hey, look, we're going to take a quick peek at this thing and make sure there's nothing major wrong with it. And we've always discussed, I think the best way to negotiate a deal is going in and saying, hey, look, we've taken a good look already. We understand the furnace is in rough shape. We know the roof is in rough shape. We saw the crack in the foundation, right? We're just trying to see if there was anything else that we didn't miss or that we missed.
Yeah.
So, having those conversations as the buyer's agent should put a lot of confidence in the seller. And now you can put an even dollar amount behind it. Right. And I assume, Lauren, and I don't know if this came up, I could put, I will, not to be included. There was an additional provisions. I don't see why you can't say, repairs not to exceed $20,000, excluding the roof that we already know needs replacement, the furnace that we already know needs replacement, et cetera. Any reason why you couldn't do that? You're still with us.
I don't think there was
Yeah.
nothing in there that I read that said you couldn't do that. I mean, I'm not a contractual lawyer or anything, but I couldn't see anything in that.
That's the way I think we handle this. If you want to continue to make your offers extremely strong and show the seller that, we want to take a quick peek at this, but our intention here is not to back out of this deal.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I don't think home inspections were ever intended. You know how we go through when we talk about some maintenance things. Sometimes those things are there to, number one, protect us so they don't come back at us. And number two, to educate people about the home that they're buying and how to care for it for years down the road. It was never intended to nickel and dime the seller. And I sometimes get frustrated when I hear that kind of thing happen. I think everybody needs to be self-responsible and understand what it is that they're purchasing, and that can be helpful.
Any other
One of the
questions?
things,
Go ahead.
one of the things I did want to talk about is recently there's been some issues with preparing the house for the inspection. And in particular, a couple. One is electrical panels. If the homeowner is painted over the electrical panel, Massachusetts is not allowing us to score the electrical panel, meaning cut around it. Homeowners have been very litigious with this, and they've gone after the inspector and the realtor. This is another shame. So if it's painted over, unfortunately, we can't get at it. It's very frustrating for us. And if it has screws in it that were not intended for that panel, meaning pointed on the inside, we're not supposed to remove it, because in doing so, and we had one happen about a year ago, where an inspector turned a screw and bam, sparks went everywhere. And so the state has now made adjustments and changes there too. They don't want us removing, if like this, where that screw was never intended to be in that panel, and it is a pointed screw, and the inspector can get a shock or worse. What's supposed to happen at that point is the power has to be cut off at the meter, which can only be done by an electrician, and panel then removed. The other thing is that on commercial properties, that's 5 units and above, oftentimes they have sprinkler systems, alarm systems, computer systems tied into those buildings. Whether they do or not, there is a mandate on the commercial side that we don't take the panel covers off. So it's not like residential where we can take the panel covers off. We don't take the panel covers off on commercial inspections because they can be tied into sprinkler systems, alarm systems, and computer systems. So just a couple of things there. Also, animals have been a big one when we go out to do the inspection. Please make sure that the animals are away for the day, doggy daycare or whatever, or in a crate, just because it's caused problems with cats getting out and animals getting frustrated with people walking through their house and getting a bit mean. So even when the owners think they're not, it's very different when you're upsetting the apple cart, and they sense that they're packing and things are different and they don't understand it. So those are just a few things that have been coming up that would be really helpful if it was prepared on the listing side.
And guys, even when you're on the buy side, for that last comment that Dave's making there, a call to the listing agent just saying, hey, when we showed the property, we did notice that there was a couple of dogs. What is the situation? Will it be taken care of? We just want to make sure we can do a thorough inspection, for that day. And so just having a conversation up front, because maybe the listing agent isn't even thinking about that. And maybe a quick phone call, the sellers do have an opportunity to do something with their pets for the time of the inspection. So if you could give that listing agent a heads up, have the conversation, I think it would be extremely helpful. Maybe they say, hey, there's nothing they can do. They're great. The dogs are great. They're not going to cause a problem. Hey, at least you tried. You got to love people painting shut the electrical panel.
Yeah.
Oh my God. People. This is random, Eric or Dan. I don't know if you guys could chat on this, but I had just jotted down, because this came up a couple of times. If you could talk about the use of down payment assistance programs in conjunction with a loan. What do you see happening with them? How can they cause issues? Just anything in general that you might want to contribute to that conversation. And I'm not talking about, the state programs. I'm talking about specifically down payment assistance programs. Hey, I've done a couple of loans where they use this program or this, and then this happens. This affects the loan. So, hey, as an agent, if you could do these things up front, it would help us.
So I think if it's figured out up front, it usually doesn't have an issue. It's a lot of times when maybe I've had this happen, a consumer has the money to put down, and we've issued them a pre-approval for a certain amount of money based on them putting down 3.5%. Then maybe they get under contract and maybe they get a little buyer's remorse and they're getting nervous. That happens. And a realtor might say, hey, what's wrong? Well, I'm worried about putting all that money down. It's all I have. And they go, well, you just get down payment assistance. And a lot of times this down payment assistance, number one, if there's a payment associated with the down payment assistance, that's going to affect our debt to income, just like adding solar, us not knowing about solar. Now we're switching from a down payment to a non-down payment. So we're borrowing more money, we're adding a payment, we're raising the debt to income. We're also raising, when we have to run these files through what we call automated underwriting, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, automated underwriting, it looks at all the risks associated with the loan. It says, hey, the credit score's this. Hey, the loan to value's this. Hey, the debt to income's this. What do they have for reserves? So when we switch from not doing down payment assistance to suddenly trying to do down payment assistance, the risk goes way up because now our debt to income has gone up. Our total loan to value has gone up because now we're trying to borrow 100% or more than 100% in some cases. And we might go from, hey, this person was approved to, hey, they're no longer approved. And then I end up with the conversation, what do you mean they're not approved anymore? It's like, we completely changed the loan program. We've changed every characteristic based on from what we were approved on a pre-approval status to now we're trying to do a completely different loan. So it can definitely change the characteristics and cause a loan that was approvable to not being approved. And then now we're going back to the client going, listen, the only way you can buy this is to put the money down. And they're like, I'm not putting the money down. And it can just create some turmoil. So the biggest thing I say is let's have these conversations up front. And then once the buyer has agreed to what they plan to do, let's not go making any rash changes without having a new discussion.
Dan, anything to add on this, or anybody else have any kind of questions on the down payment assistance programs?
Well, I think Eric kind of really covered it. It's the biggest thing is making sure that kind of going into it exactly what your pre-approval consists of. Are you getting down payment assistance or not? I know you had mentioned state programs, so it does depend what state you're in, what type of down payment assistance you're going to get, and because again, if you, like you said, if you do try to change characteristics later, especially if your credit score maybe isn't that strong or your debt to income ratio was already maybe kind of tight, if you were at the top of the pre-approval budget that you've already established and worked within, if you have a pre-approval for 400,000 that is based on them putting down 3.5%, and then after the fact you say, all right, well, now we would rather get the down payment assistance for this. Well, in reality, like if that were discovered up front, the amount of your pre-approval would have come down. That you wouldn't be maxing out your pre-approval at that same amount if you were getting, and this is typical. Most down payment assistance programs are all repayable in some form, other than in Rhode Island housing right now where they don't have a monthly payment associated with it. That one isn't going to change your debt to income ratio. But most of them do. They have a repayment, whether it's based on a 10-year repayment or a 15-year amortization period for that down payment assistance loan. But that gets tacked into your PITI, into your overall housing expense, and it's going to push your front end mortgage debt ratio up as well as your back end debt ratio up. But if before you go in and make your offer and get yourself under contract, hey, listen, you go over the numbers with your, you've already established your pre-approval budget. You're now ready to make your offer. It's good to revisit that with your loan officer and say, hey, we're ready to make this offer. Let's just go over the numbers with my client. Okay, this is what you're going to have to put down. This is what your monthly payment's going to be. The rough numbers here so that client knows before they sign the contract. And then we know too that their loan's going to go through without any issues.
Any other questions on that stuff, guys? Those are kind of the key things I had on the agenda for today. Did anybody have anything that's happened over the past week on a transaction that would be just kind of a good experience share. Hey, this funky thing happened on my deal, or watch out for this type of stuff? All right, I think we'll just we'll wrap it up a few minutes early today. Obviously, we got to pay attention to this government shutdown. See how long it goes. Hopefully, it's not going to really affect what we are doing. Just be aware if it's a newer deal that you're trying to structure. There could be some lag time, and potentially just having the conversation with the listing agent to say, hey, if this thing continues, we might have to extend the closing. And is that, can your seller do that? Just having those conversations so that everybody's on the same page, so there's no surprises at the end. All right. You guys have yourselves a great week, and we'll come back and do it again next week. Take care.